What is up, folks? I am Kevin Ioli. Thank you for joining me. One of my favorite guests joins me right now, Nico Ali Walsh, of course, the grandson of the greatest, my favorite, my idol. So always love talking to Nico. Nico will be fighting on ESPN on on Saturday in Miami, Florida, in a rematch against Sona Akale in the rematch of his only defeat. So let's start right there. Tough time with him last year. You lost a decision in Tulsa, Oklahoma. What do you remember from that first fight that you lost?
I just remember it was an ugly fight. It was not. I just wasn't myself that fight, and yeah, I remember being shocked when the decision was read, and it didn't really feel like I lost. Like, it didn't hit me because I didn't feel like I lost, but I took everything I needed to know from that fight and used it into training for this fight the last 10 weeks.
Do you feel like, did you lose focus at all? And, you had that undefeated run going. You end up in the draw with Danny Rosenberger that was overturned when he failed a drug test, and then you had the loss. I mean, what do you attribute that to? Is it just what happens to fighters, or was there anything that you can point to, why you kind of fell off the win train there?
I would attribute that to being an Ali. I'm having a career that no one else has had. No one else, including my grandfather, has had, because my first fight was on ESPN. My second, third fight was on ESPN. These are on main cards, right on TV. I'm being jumped from little to no amateur experience straight into the big leagues. I didn't really know what I was getting myself into, but with all that, my opposition, my opponents have to be better. I can't be fighting guys, where, a majority of the world champions we see today, their first few fights are against guys who are 2-10,
right,
5-20. Like, those are the records that we see. I've never fought anyone with a losing record. So that's what it comes down to. It's just me being under the spotlight, the microscope, and it's all part of me learning. I'm getting my experience now.
You're an interesting case here because you remind me a lot of Jake Paul, right? Jake Paul's doing a lot of the same thing you're doing. No, he's not necessarily fighting boxers all the time, right? But I mean, a guy with no boxing experience that's, trying to build up and do everything. When you see what he's doing, right, do you ever question like the path that you chose to take it seriously and to try to fight real boxers and build yourself up?
Yeah, so here's Jake Paul. We've got in boxing today. There are fighters. Jake Paul is a boxer. Okay, he's got fights. He's a boxer. He's not a great one. He's a novice. But he is a boxer at the end of the day. And in boxing today, there are people who will sell out. They will sell themselves just to be viral, just to be, just to get clicks and views and likes. He's one of those guys. And he will sell out for money, for fame, just to be heard, just to be seen. I'm not one of those guys. I've had the opportunity, I've had the choice where I could take the fast cash route in boxing. I could be fighting Peyton Manning on Saturday night, and I'd be getting paid a whole lot more than what I'm getting paid to fight this real fight. You know what I'm saying? So I chose to not go that route. I'm fighting for legacy. I'm fighting to actually be great. And I'm continuing the greatest legacy in boxing history. I don't want Jake Paul and the likes of, the rodents of boxing, the YouTube guys, the celebrities. I don't want that tainting my legacy this early in my career. You look at Mayweather, he's fighting whoever will put on gloves now. He deserves it. Look at his career.
He's one of the great fighters of all time.
He can do whatever he wants. I'm not in that position. I'm not going to cash out and sell myself short this early in my career. It would make no sense.
we talked about your aunt Laila fighting, and a lot of people think she's the greatest female boxer that's ever lived. Clarissa Shields would probably argue that, right? But
she would. But it's a good argument.
It's a good argument. Laila is, if she's not the best, she's certainly up at like your grandfather was in the top 2 or 3. You haven't had that kind of success yet that Laila had, right? So how long do you push until you say to yourself, okay, I'm making it, or I'm going to try something else?
I'm not trying something else. I've had my path set on boxing from the day I turned pro, from the day I walked into the first boxing gym. But this is my path. So the pinnacle to me will be, getting the belts, whatever division I end up in. I'm only 23, so I don't know if I'm gonna stay middleweight or super welterweight. I have no clue. But wherever I end up, being the champ at that division, holding the belt at that division, that's what.
Uh-oh.
Sorry, I don't know what just happened.
Go. Okay.
Yeah.
So we're back with Nico, by the way. We had a little break there, but.
Yeah, my bad. So it just, holding the belts in the division, whatever division I decide to conquer, that would be the goal. That's when I will reach my pinnacle. And that's something of substance. Going back to, the whole money and YouTube thing. If I was a millionaire today and I was fighting YouTubers, that would be great for, the average person, but I don't attribute money to success. I don't attribute fame to success. Success to me is fortifying that legacy, taking it to the next level. So success to me looks like reaching the pinnacle of wherever I'm at.
Sure. And I guess here's the question. You mentioned Jake Paul, and kind of disparaging terms, right? But why didn't you, if you were so serious about pursuing this, why didn't you go and fight in the amateurs? And why didn't you build yourself up the way that you feel should have been done right, as opposed to throwing yourself in the pro? Because there's a lot of people, Nico, and I don't say this, but I think there's a lot of people that would say, you're treading off your grandfather's name. You're treading off Laila's name and the success that they've had, and you're trying to get attention for yourself because of them. So, if you're going to criticize him, wouldn't it be fair to say you should have gone in the amateurs and fought your way up?
I was in the amateurs. I've had less than 25 amateur fights. I've probably had less than 20 amateur fights, but I was in the amateurs. I started boxing when I was 14. I started with fighting for childhood cancer awareness. So I was doing shows for that, and so that's how I got my start. But I got my start the real way. I just didn't have as many fights as I wanted to have.
Sure.
And I'm at the point now where I'm getting more experience in the pros than I did in the amateurs.
Right.
That's something, that's something I couldn't have control over. I was traveling a lot just to get fights. It was hard for me. I live in Vegas, so it was hard for me to get amateur fights in Vegas. So I had to travel to LA. I had to travel to Chicago, Arizona. Like it was tough, but I tried to make my amateur career as great as it could be.
When I grew up, throughout the 60s, 70s, and 80s, amateur boxing was huge. And, you would have guys who would fight 200, 300, 400 times, like Loma did, right? And everything. Right. And now you see, there may not be boxing in the Olympics and, and all this. What do you think the effect long-term of amateur boxing's demise is going to have on the pro game?
I'm gonna be honest. I'm not a huge fan of amateur boxing. I feel that the amateur. I love the Olympics. I love the fact that you could fight for your country. I think that's so cool, and it's such a notable accomplishment to be able to say I went to the Olympics. No matter what you got, bronze, gold, whatever, silver, just going is an accomplishment in itself. Right. But we're in the era of boxing where people don't need to have huge amateur backgrounds like Loma, because it takes a toll on your body.
Yeah.
And for the most part, people they burn out. Like I've seen, fighters. I don't know how many fights exactly Lomachenko has, but it's less than 20, if I'm not mistaken. And that's crazy to think and he's at the end of his career. I think he said that. And he's got less than 20 fights. So then you have to ask yourself, would you rather have that 300 amateur fights and not be getting anything from them really, or would you rather have your fights be in the pros? And I'm more towards, I would take the fights in the pros.
Yeah.
You see a lot of guys who are very successful who didn't have big amateur backgrounds. Frank Martin, who just fought Tank, he started late. He didn't have a big amateur background. He's doing absolutely amazing in the pros. Same with Rolly, Rolando Romero. He's doing great in the pros. He made it to the top of his division, and he had little to no amateur fights. So, we're entering a different era right now.
So you were being trained now by Ismael Salas, who was one of a Cuban trainer who trained a lot of really good fighters. And that Cuban system certainly produced a lot, they produced a lot of great pros, but certainly more great amateurs than great pros, right? And I think your point about getting burned out is well taken, because a lot of the Cubans that were expected to be elite pros, maybe didn't turn out that way. But I have to say I'm a little surprised. I have great respect for Salas, and I've had a lot of people say to me, who do you think the best trainers are? And he's always on my list. But I didn't think your style and Ismail's style kind of meshed, right? And I didn't see, when I heard that you were with him, that surprised me a little bit. What led you to pick him, and what has he brought to you so far?
Well, I'm with he's a great guy. At the end of the day, I forget all the boxing stuff. If you're a good person, I will mesh well with you. And that's what it comes down to, is if you mesh well with the trainer. And he's great. His family's great. So I'm working with, on top of that, Fernando Diaz and Jamie Belt. We have a whole team. So I'm thankful for these guys. They don't force me to fight a certain style. Sure. They know that I'm my own person, and they only want to enhance my style, enhance what I'm already naturally gifted with. So that is the best thing about my new team.
We see your style now, but when you get 30 fights, 25, 30 fights like that, how do you think it's going to morph, and how do you see yourself when you're the best version of yourself? How would you describe what your style would be?
I would describe the best version of myself would be somewhere between a Sugar Ray Leonard and a Marvin Hagler.
Oh my Lord!
Yeah. See, these are the guys that I like. But I'm a boxer puncher. I don't like just I'm not a Tommy Hearns where I have to stay on the outside. Right. I'm not, like, my size is not that big for my weight class, so I'm not a sniper, a sharpshooter like that. But I like going on the inside sometimes, and that mid range is perfect for me. So I would say those two guys are the best version of me.
Interesting. Before we talk about the fight on Saturday, I just want to ask you about your brother's MMA career, and
yes.
what it's like watching Biagio. He's fighting in the PFL. Took a little different path than you've taken. When you watch him fight, what are the emotions like? Like, is that more difficult than when you're making the walk yourself?
Oh yes, I hate watching my brother fight. I hate watching anyone I know fight. I get so nervous. I don't get nervous for my fights anymore. I get more excited. Let's go. Let's make it happen already. But with these guys, I actually get nervous. Just because I think the worst. Like, I don't want them to get hurt. I don't want this to happen. So I hate watching them fight. But I will always watch his fights. I will always be there, and same for all my other, boxing teammates.
Do you guys ever throw hands a little bit in practice?
No. He got a late start in his MMA, but he asked me questions here and there, and I'll answer certain things. Any MMA guy who has good hands will have the advantage. I firmly believe that.
So why is that? So if they have good hands, but they don't have jiu-jitsu or they don't have wrestling, you still think they're going to be?
I do. If you had to allocate everything together, like between wrestling, let's just say wrestling, jiu-jitsu, and boxing.
Mm-hmm.
and you get 100 points. I would put 50 in boxing, or maybe even 60 in boxing, and go 15-15. Or however much, 20-20.
We got to work on that math.
Yeah, my bad. 60-20-20. That's what we're doing. I would say that the greatest MMA fighters, I got my introduction into MMA through Conor McGregor.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like a lot of people have. The greatest MMA guys, the guys who fight in the UFC or any platform, they had great boxing backgrounds. Conor McGregor was one of them.
John Jones, Habib.
Habib.
Wrestling.
Habib's more of a wrestler, but he's a different breed. He's definitely like unique, one in a million.
One last question about Biagio. So, he obviously was a highly recruited football player. He went through that, all that stuff. But since you really took the brunt of all these stuff with, coming in the pro boxing, right? And you've had all the interviews and all the attention. Have you been able to help him deal with the transition? Because, he's going to get the same thing as the more success he has in MMA. He's going to have the same thing you've had. Have you been able to talk to him? And do you feel like, he's on a good path because of the help that you've been able to give him in that regard?
Of course. I've been, he asked me a lot of questions about that stuff, and I tell him, but there's not a lot that you need to say to anyone who's an Ali, because they've been in Ali their whole life. I was born in Ali, same with my brother and same with my family. So we don't feel the pressure of being in Ali. I mean, I'm assuming you, like other people, would feel the pressure of having more spotlight, sure, but being in Ali, it's like we don't look at our grandfather as the GOAT, the greatest fighter ever. We look at him as Poppy, is what we used to call him. So, but yeah, I do help him with whatever he needs.
I guess the hardest thing to me, maybe, and maybe I'm wrong on this, but everywhere you go, it's not just, Nico Ali Walsh. It's Nico Ali Walsh, grandson of, right? And, I know you're proud of your grandfather, but the fact that you have to answer the same questions, and it's
annoying. It's annoying. I get sick of it. I don't talk about it in interviews a lot, but I get absolutely sick of it. It's my grandfather. I love him to death, but he annoys me sometimes with how much people talk about him. But I've got to take a step back and realize how important, how big he was to other people. And I've just got to accept that if he was anybody else, if I was Floyd Mayweather, everything that Floyd Mayweather has accomplished, I would still be Floyd Mayweather, grandson of, what I'm saying? So like, he's a bigger than life figure. People will always want to add that grandson at the end of my name. It was something I was born with. I can't get away from that.
So let's wrap up with talking about the fight, because this is a big fight in your career, right? So you are 10-1. There's a win that you had in Africa that is not listed on your record that I think will be corrected.
Yes.
That was a split decision and a 6-rounder that will be added onto your record. So what changes do you make in this fight against Akale on Saturday? And are you confident in the way your camp has gone that, that you're going to fight a better fight than you did, even though I know you thought you won the fight, but even, you'll fight a better fight than you did last time?
Yeah, no, I've done everything to make this fight go exactly how I planned for it to go. I'm young in the pro boxing game, so my ability to learn and adapt is so much faster than someone who's, you're not teaching an old dog new tricks, is what I'm trying to say. So that was only a year ago, but a year is a long time for me to prepare and change. And you haven't seen the best of me in the first fight. So if he goes in watching my first fight, he's going to be mistaken, because the first fight wasn't really me. You've got to see how I've grown so much since then. And I'm looking forward to proving it to you.
You fought August 26th against Akale the first time, and that was coming off the draw with Rosenberger, right? And I remember seeing you. That was on the Rosenberger draw was on the Devin Haney Loma undercard, right?
Yes.
That was a pretty high profile fight for you. And I remember when you had the draw, and I saw you walk back to your mom and dad sitting in the back of the audience there, and you just had a big sigh, like, you know, it was almost like I took it that you felt relief that the perfect record was gone, right? I don't know if I read that accurately or not, but like sort of what when your perfect record was gone in that moment, what was, you know, was there any weight lifted from your shoulder and then you could just concentrate on being the best version of yourself as opposed to having this, you know, perfect record?
I don't think I was pissed when the scorecards were read. I was not happy with the decision at all. So I wasn't necessarily happy that the perfect record was over, but I was more so relieved that now I know what needs to be done. I had to make changes just with training, with everything, and unfortunately they didn't get made, and it carried on to the next fight, which was the loss with Akale. So you know, everything I just chalk it up to a learning experience. The draw felt more of a loss than the Sona fight. That fight was terrible. And then afterwards, when they told me about him testing positive, I was so upset. I was just like, it's terrible. You know, you're seeing it in boxing now through Ryan Garcia and the
Right.
Devin Haney stuff. So it's just no one understands the emotions of being a fighter who's in the ring with someone who could have, you know, potentially hurt you.
Yeah.
And they're cheating to do so. So it's very unfortunate. But yeah, no, I'm glad that I've learned. I take all those moments, the bad ones especially, as lessons, and I've learned so much since then. That feels like years ago. That was only last year.
You're so good at this, we could talk forever, but I wonder if you ever think about one day when your career is over, getting on the other side of the camera because you know the game, you got the
I've done it
charisma,
already.
you're a good talker. You thinking about that?
Of course, I've done it already. Top Rank has extended the opportunity for me to I commentated the last Inoue fight. And then I commentated the last Lomachenko fight as well, but I was commentating on Sky Sports.
Okay,
But
okay.
it was such an amazing opportunity. It's so much work that goes into commentating. I had to watch I had to watch the Lomachenko. I had to watch all his fights. I had to watch his opponent's fights, and I had to do that for every single person on the card. I had to
Right.
write spreadsheets of info and notes on how to win, how they lose. It was. I'm looking forward.
Okay, can you hear me? No?